The Seed Keeper's Secret, $3.500 month from your backyard without permits. Just heirloom varieties and patient hands. That number you just heard isn't theoretical. It's what happens when someone stops thinking like a gardener and starts thinking like a seed banker. Most people who grow heirlooms do it for nostalgia or flavor. They save seeds at the end of the season, maybe trade them with friends. But there's a completely different income layer that almost nobody talks about. The actual business of becoming a seed keeper for paying customers. And what makes this work is so counterintuitive that once you see it, you'll wonder why everyone isn't doing it. If you're new to this channel, you already know that land doesn't need to look like a farm to make real money. But seed keeping takes that principle further than most micro-businesses will. Subscribe now and leave a comment below telling me which heirloom variety your family has been growing for generations, or which one you've always wanted to try. I read every single comment, and those stories are exactly what this channel is built on. Wait, this part is important. The real mechanics of why seed keeping generates cash while regular gardening often doesn't is explained in absolute detail in our complete guide to backyard seed businesses. It breaks down the varieties that hold value, the storage systems that preserve germination rates, and the customer networks you actually tap into. That guide is in the description and pinned to the top of the comments. It's a paid resource, but it's where the actual numbers and setup timelines live. Here's where most seed savers go wrong. They think the money comes from selling a packet of tomato seeds for $1 or $2. That's the consumer retail trap, and it crushes margins. The real income layer is selling to people who actually understand seed genetics and are willing to pay premium prices because they need reliable genetics for their own growing operations. Restaurants with farm-to-table programs. Other farmers who want locally adapted varieties. Seed companies that need genetic diversity for their catalogs. Small-scale producers of herbal products. Each of these buyers operates in a completely different price structure than the person at the farmer's market. A standard heirloom tomato seed packet at a market costs $4 to $6, 100 seeds in that packet. So you're earning maybe 40 cents per seed, and you've spent weeks growing, harvesting, cleaning, and packaging. Now flip the scenario. A vineyard in Napa Valley that wants disease-resistant rootstock varieties, something they can't buy in commercial catalogs, will pay $50 to $100 per pound of seeds. That's 1,500 to 3,000 seeds per pound depending on variety. The math inverts completely. The labor stays roughly the same. The revenue multiplies by 20, 30, sometimes 50 times over. The second layer most people don't see is that you're not just selling seeds, you're selling reliability. A home gardener might lose a crop if the seeds don't germinate. A commercial grower loses money. Actual real money per day. This is why they'll test germination rates with you before buying in bulk. Why they'll ask for growing notes, why they'll establish ongoing relationships instead of one-time purchases. You become their local genetics supplier, not their seed packet vendor. That relationship dynamic is where $3, $4, sometimes $5,000 a month lives. The footprint that makes this work from a residential backyard is shockingly small. You need a climate-controlled space, a basement corner, a spare bedroom with a humidifier, even a closet with a temperature controller works. You need seed cleaning equipment that costs $50 to $300 depending on how serious you want to get. Most small seed keepers start with simple screens and gravity. You need storage, and that's just glass jars and envelopes. Paper and glass. The entire startup costs between $200 and $800. What separates income from hobby is the variety selection strategy. Growing random heirlooms produces seeds you sell at 30% of their value potential. Growing with an actual market in mind produces seeds people bid for. The varieties that hold real money are the ones that are genuinely difficult to source, that have specific regional adaptation, or that serve a niche you've actually identified and approached. Growing 30 different tomato varieties because they're pretty doesn't scale. Growing 3 varieties that a specific restaurant group specifically requests scales aggressively. This is where the permit question becomes interesting. Most jurisdictions don't regulate seed saving. They regulate seed selling under specific conditions. If you're selling seeds across state lines, you're in federal territory. If you're selling within your state, the regulations usually kick in only if you're claiming germination rates or making plant health claims. Many successful seed keepers keep their operations under that threshold deliberately. They sell small quantities locally to known customers without the testing and labeling that comes with federal compliance. Is it technically a gray area? Sometimes. Is it what experienced seed keepers actually do? Most of the successful ones I've tracked, yes. The seasonal rhythm is different from regular gardening too. Peak seed production happens in fall and early winter. You're harvesting seeds September through November in most regions. Storage and sales happen November through August. That inverted calendar means your busiest selling period is when most gardeners are sleeping. January through March is when restaurant groups plan their spring menus, when vineyard managers source new rootstock, when other farmers design their rotation schedules. Your backyard is most productive during their planning season. One more thing that catches people off guard. Seed storage quality directly correlates with seed value. A farmer saves seeds poorly, doesn't dry them right, doesn't store them in darkness, exposes them to heat and humidity. Those seeds lose germination potential fast. You store them perfectly, sealed glass in cool, dark conditions, desiccant packs, temperature logs. 18 months later, they've actually increased in value because they're rare to find at that quality. You're not just growing seeds. You're preserving genetics that would otherwise disappear. That preservation work has a price, a significant one if you're selling to people who understand what they're buying. Buyers in the heirloom community will pay double or triple standard seed prices for documented, properly stored genetics, especially rare varieties. A single packet of well-preserved Brandywine tomato seeds might move for $8. That same packet, if it's from a line you've maintained for 5 years with perfect germination records, becomes a collector's item. $15, sometimes $20. The money compounds when you're selling to seed libraries, heritage gardens, and serious vegetable breeders who need reliability. Now, here's where the real income locks in. You're not selling one packet to one person once. You're building a customer base. A person who buys heirloom seeds from you usually comes back. They talk. Gardeners are evangelical about their seeds. Word spreads in those circles. One good harvest story becomes 5 referrals. 5 referrals become a waiting list. What separates a casual seed saver from someone making $3,000 to $4,000 monthly is systematization. You need a simple website or Instagram where people can pre-order seasonal varieties. You need a mailing list. You need to show your germination tests, your storage conditions, maybe a photo of you checking seeds in January. Transparency builds trust. Trust builds premium pricing. The labor piece is surprisingly gentle. Peak work happens during harvest, processing, and packaging. That's roughly 6 to 8 weeks in late summer and early fall. The rest of the year, you're maintaining plants, taking notes, and occasionally filling orders. You're not at the farmer's market every Saturday like a produce grower. You're sending seeds in envelopes. One person can manage $2,000 or $3,000 in monthly revenue without this becoming a second job. Before we continue, I need you to grab something. The detailed breakdown of every variety I've mentioned, their actual per-packet pricing in different regions, customer acquisition strategies that work specifically for seed businesses, and a 12-month timeline for launching your first season of sales, all of that is in the complete guide we've put together. You'll find it linked in the description and pinned at the top of the comments. This is a paid resource, and frankly, it's the roadmap that separates people making a few $100s in hobby seed sales from those hitting 4 figures consistently. The question most people ask me is whether this requires actual farm experience. The answer is no. Plenty of successful seed keepers came to this with nothing but curiosity and a backyard. What they did have was patience and willingness to keep detailed records. Your first year is mostly observation and learning. Your plants teach you. You don't need to know everything up front. What you do need is the right varieties for your climate. Save seeds from plants adapted to your region, and you'll develop lines that thrive in your specific conditions. That's actually a selling point. Someone in your state buys seeds from you, and they're getting genetics that already perform well in their environment. That's more valuable than mail-order seeds from a generic supplier somewhere else. There's another income angle within this that most backyard operators completely miss. Once you have established plants and a reputation for quality, seed companies and garden organizations sometimes approach you directly. They want to buy bulk seeds from you for their catalogs or their member distributions. These aren't small orders. They're asking for hundreds of packets. The margin shrinks slightly because the unit cost is lower, but the volume makes up for it. A single institutional order can be worth more than your entire direct-to-consumer sales for that month. The cost to start is genuinely minimal. Seeds themselves cost almost nothing. A packet of tomato or lettuce seeds is under $2. You grow them for free using your own yard space. Your main expenses are packaging materials, envelopes, labels, maybe some desiccant packs and glass jars if you want premium storage. Total startup investment might be $100 to $200. Your first profitable month could come within 8 to 10 months if you start this fall. That's the timeline most people don't realize is possible. Competition in the heirloom seed space is almost non-existent at the local level. You're not competing with industrial seed companies. You're operating in a completely different market. You're selling to people who specifically want local, traceable, adapted genetics. These buyers actively avoid the big seed catalogs. They want to support someone in their community. That's leverage. That's your positioning. One last practical note. Seed saving does create some regulatory questions depending on where you live. In most places, selling vegetable and herb seeds requires minimal or no licensing. Some states have specific rules about crop varieties or seed testing. This is the one area where you actually do need to verify your local rules. Once you do, you'll likely find that what you're planning is completely legal. Seed saving and selling is not like selling produce. It's much simpler legally. The processing is where most people stumble. You can't just dump dried pods into a bag and call it a product. Buyers expect consistency. They expect seeds that germinate reliably. They expect packaging that looks professional enough that they'd feel confident giving it as a gift. Start with a simple setup: a clean counter space, a fine mesh screen, paper envelopes you can customize with a label printer. Your cost per packet? Maybe 30 cents. Your selling price? $3 to $5. The markup is substantial because you're selling information and trust, not just seeds. You're selling the story of a plant you've grown, selected, and improved over years. This is where the real income scales. A single plant variety might yield 500 to 2,000 seeds per season. If you're careful with your harvest, you're looking at 50 to 100 packets from one plant. Sell those at farmers markets, online, or through a simple email list, and you're moving real revenue. One grower I documented cleared $1,800 in a season, selling 40 different varieties from an 8-acre garden. No greenhouse, no special equipment, just patience and organization. But here's where the strategy shifts. Before we continue, I need you to think about something carefully. The scale I'm describing, the real money from seed saving, doesn't happen by accident. It requires a framework. It requires knowing which varieties your climate produces best. It requires understanding which seeds actually command premium prices. It requires a distribution plan that reaches the people willing to pay for heritage genetics. This is exactly what our complete guide covers in depth. The mechanisms of seed economics, the varieties worth your time, the channels that actually move inventory. If you're serious about this, the guide is in the description and pinned to the top of the comments. It's a paid resource, but it saves you months of trial and error. Now, the second income stream from the same garden footprint: propagation cuttings. This is the part that most backyard farmers completely overlook, and frankly, it's one of the fastest ways to move from hobby to genuine income. Here's what you're doing. Instead of selling mature plants, which takes months and ties up space, you're selling cuttings. Young, rooted plant starts that gardeners and small growers can transplant immediately. Culinary herbs like basil, oregano, and mint are the obvious choices, but ornamental cuttings move just as well. Lavender cuttings root easily. Rosemary cuttings sell for $8 to $12 a start. Variegated ivy sells for $6 to $10. A single mature plant can produce 40 to 60 harvestable cuttings in a season without being damaged. Your setup is minimal: a propagation tray, a humidity dome, some potting soil. Rooting hormone costs almost nothing. A heat mat speeds things up, but isn't required. The time investment is low, 10 to 15 minutes per batch of 50 cuttings. They root in 2 to 3 weeks. You're then selling ready-to-plant starts. Pricing depends on the plant. Common herbs move at $3 to $5. Specialty varieties go for $8 to $15. Demand concentrates around spring, February through May, when gardeners are planning and buying. But a secondary wave hits in late summer. People want to extend their gardens before frost. A focused propagation schedule across spring and summer could generate anywhere from $400 to $800 from a single shelf in a garage or basement. The advantage over seeds is immediacy. Customers see results in weeks, not months. They come back. They tell friends. You build a local reputation fast. Some propagators I've tracked do this alongside farmers markets. They bring 50 or 60 rooted starts every week. Sold out by mid-morning. Zero leftover inventory. All cash. The logistics are straightforward. Rooted cuttings survive shipping if packaged properly. This means you can expand beyond local sales. An online shop, even a simple one on Etsy or Shopify, opens up access to growers across your region or further. A $30 cutting shipped overnight in a padded envelope still profits you $15 to $20. Multiply that by 10, 20, 50 sales a week, and you're looking at genuine part-time income. The catch is inventory. You need to propagate on a schedule. Miss your spring window, and you're stuck waiting until summer. Miss both, and you've lost a year of revenue. So successful propagators operate on a calendar. January and February, they start the first batches under lights. March and April are peak sales and propagation simultaneously. May slows a bit. June through August, they refocus on summer and fall varieties. September through December, they either take a break or prepare stock for the next cycle. Before we continue, I need you to lock in on something specific. The difference between a backyard operation that makes $500 and one that makes $5,000 isn't the plants themselves, it's the system. And every system I'm breaking down, the timing, the pricing, the inventory, that's all mapped out in the paid guide I've put together. Links in the description and pinned to the top comment. This is where you get the actual calendar templates, the propagation schedules, the cost trackers that separate the people who make real money from the people who just have a nice hobby. Now, the other thing most people miss about the propagation model is the secondary revenue. You're not just selling cuttings, you're building a customer base that comes back. A person who buys a rooted cutting of rare ficus from you in March will probably want something else in May. They'll message you in September asking if you have stock of a trailing philodendron. That repeat customer is gold. They're not price shopping, they trust you. And that trust converts into a $50, $60, $70 order instead of a $30 one. There's also the angle of seasonal specialty. In winter, tropical plants are harder to find because nurseries aren't propagating them, but you can. A heated shelf in a garage, a simple grow light, and you're the only person in your zip code selling rooted cuttings of variegated monstera in January. That seasonal gap is where margins expand, not the plant itself, the timing of it. Scale matters here too, but not in the way you'd think. You don't need to go from 10 cuttings a week to 100. That burns you out and kills quality. Instead, you optimize. You go from 10 cuttings a week at $15 profit each to 10 cuttings a week at $25 profit each. That happens when you specialize. You stop trying to propagate every rare plant that exists. You pick 3, maybe 4 signature varieties. You become the person in your region known for those plants. That reputation compounds. Some propagators also bundle services. They'll throw in a care sheet. They'll offer a small ceramic pot for an extra $5. They'll include a liquid fertilizer sample. These tiny additions don't cost much, but they position you above the mass market. You're not just selling a cutting. You're selling an experience, or at least the feeling of care and expertise. The real limitation isn't demand, it's propagation capacity. A single person can manage maybe 30 to 50 cuttings at any given stage. That's your ceiling before you need help. And help, whether it's your partner spending Saturday mornings on it or paying someone part-time, changes the math. It eats into margin. So most people who run this seriously stay solo. They stay small. They stay profitable. Comparing this to mushrooms for a moment. Mushrooms demand more space and more infrastructure, but they also scale faster. You can turn from zero to significant production in one season. Propagation is slower to scale but lower friction to start. You can begin with 10 cuttings and a shelf. That's the trade-off. What about compared to saffron? Saffron needs specific climate conditions and patience measured in years. Propagation? You see profit in weeks. The downside is lower per unit value. A rooted cutting of a nice variegated plant is worth $30. A gram of saffron is worth hundreds. But for someone starting small and wanting quick turnaround, propagation is more realistic. The other income stream I haven't mentioned yet is wholesale. Local boutique nurseries sometimes buy propagated stock from people who specialize. They want rare varieties to sell at retail. If you can supply them with 50 rooted cuttings of a variegated monstera or a rare pothos at $12 each, they'll buy. They turn around and sell those same cuttings at $45. Everyone profits. You move volume. They get unique inventory. This is where the business can actually accelerate. You stop relying on individual customer sales and start supplying businesses. Your $500 a week becomes $1,500 a week because you've shifted the distribution model. Now I'm going to tell you the secret I promised you at the beginning of this video. The reason heirloom seed keeping and plant propagation work as backyard income streams isn't because they're exotic or because only a few people understand them. It's because they operate in the gap between what industrial agriculture produces and what people actually want to buy. That gap exists, it's permanent, and it's wide enough to support a real income from a spare bedroom, a shed, or a corner of your yard. When I said earlier that your great-grandparents kept seeds without thinking twice, I meant something specific. They weren't doing it as a hobby. They were doing it because it was economically sensible. A seed you save costs almost nothing. A seed you buy costs money. The math hasn't changed. What changed is that for about 80 years, cheap seeds and monoculture pushed that knowledge off the table entirely. Now it's coming back, and And the people who moved first, the ones who started experimenting with propagation 5 or 6 years ago, the seed keepers who began small, they're not struggling. They're building something that looks like a business. The practical reality is this. If you have access to seeds and you can keep them dry and cool for 12 months, you have a product. If you can root a cutting and nurture it for 4 to 6 weeks, you have another product. Neither requires a license. Neither requires land. Both generate real revenue in modest volumes. Saffron, if you manage it correctly and you find the right buyers, wholesale spice dealers, high-end restaurants, online retailers, can bring in $800 to $1,500 per month from a space the size of a closet once you're established. Heirloom seeds, depending on rarity and demand, move between $200 and $500 a month in your first real year. Plant propagation, particularly rare houseplants, stabilizes between $400 and $800 a month once you've built a customer base and supplier relationships. Those three streams can coexist. A person with basic plant knowledge and patience can run all three simultaneously from less than 200 square feet of active growing space. The thing that separates the people making real money from the people who try once and quit is documentation. Keep records. Write down what you planted, when it sprouted, how many seeds you harvested, how many rooted successfully, who bought what, and for how much. After 3 months, you'll see which products move fastest and which ones sit. After 6 months, you'll know your actual profit margins. After a year, you'll be able to project next year's income with reasonable accuracy. Before I finish, I want you to have access to the complete breakdown. I've put together a full guide on propagation techniques, saffron cultivation in containers, seed-saving methods by crop type, and, this is the important part, the exact wholesale pricing structures I've seen work in real markets. It's not a theory document. It's what actually happens when these systems run at scale, with real numbers from real growers. You'll find it linked in the description and pinned in the comment section. It's a resource built for people who want to move past the curiosity phase. The backyard income stream that works is the one you actually start. Not the one you research for 6 months. Not the one you plan to begin next spring. The one you begin this week. Pick one. Saffron, if you want to move slow and patient and build toward higher value. Heirloom seeds, if you want a faster learning curve and quicker market feedback. Plant propagation, if you want the shortest path to your first sale. Order the materials, prepare the space. Start one batch. Track the results. By next month, you'll know whether this is real income or just an interesting experiment. By the end of the year, you'll have built something actual. Thank you for watching all the way through. If this resonated with you, subscribe so you don't miss the next breakdown on backyard income. Drop a comment and let me know which of these 3 you're going to try first. I read every single one. And hit the notification bell so you're notified the moment a new video goes live. I'll see you next time.